Texans take care of business up in AT&T Stadium thanks to a dominating defensive performance, and SARS, they finally scored points in the second half. We talk about that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, y'all travel well. I saw a lot of y'all in AT&T Stadium, but I'm credentialed media member and Texans football analyst John Some Sports Guy Hickman alongside Texans credentialed media member and the man normally with the big hat, but he has the big headphones on and he's tired. So there goes that big smile. Brian, Big Sarge, Bearfield, thank you for making us your first listen of the day and every day. You guys are a part of our Locked On Podcast Network family, your team every day. Shout out to our players, our Himalaya players, our everydayers. Today we are talking about the Texans handling business. Also, don't mess with Texans. And if y'all know little Kiki, don't mess with Texans. But the defense for Houston, of course, they went up against a Dallas offense that missed a lot. However, they played beautifully last night against the Dallas Cowboys. And just the eye test success. Some of the things that Sarge and I want to talk about before a lot of the analytics come out, just what we saw immediately from that game to dive into. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Sarge, all week, honestly, all season for the most part, we've complained about Bobby Slowik and the offense being too predictable, the lack of tempo, and not bringing the fight to defenses and allowing their QB to get hit, especially as of late. But against the Cowboys, the Texans offense played with tempo. Bobby called an aggressive game plan. They only allowed one sack. Joe Mixon rushed for 3 TDs, and the Texans looked like a complete team for all 4 quarters. And most importantly, they scored touchdowns in the second half. Sarge, take it over.
John, first off, hey fans, viewers, listeners, this is how much I love you all. It is late. It is late, but very, very, very early in the morning. But I could not make sure that you all got the best Texans coverage throughout the United States, not just in the state of Texas, but throughout the United States. And John, let me tell you something. States. There was a familiar sound. As we sat inside of that visitors interview room, the media room where they do the press conferences, which is connected to the visitors locker room. John was sitting there, and it had been a minute since I've heard the music play. And once the music came on, then you started to hear the players, and then you could hear D'Amico in there. And John, it was just sweet, sweet music to our ears, because that meant that the Texans had that winning feeling back. John, I loved what the Houston Texans did right from the jump, coming out, being very aggressive, getting the ball to Nico early. And even though it did not count, it set the tone and it set the tempo for what the Houston Texans wanted to do. And that carried over throughout the entire game. Of course, there's going to be times, there's no team in the NFL that's going to sustain, there should have Detroit Lions, but there's no team that's going to sustain the offensive drives every offensive possession. So the Houston Texans had some offensive possessions they would love to have back. CJ even said it in the press conference that he would love to have, some of those throws back and even on that interception. But John, listen, they went in there and they did exactly what they were supposed to do and show who is the big brothers of Texas.
Sarge, for me, when I walked away from that game, I walked away from myself thinking, okay, Bobby, there's no more excuses. We saw you call the game plan that we've expected to see all year long. And I think a large part of that is getting Nico Collins back. And to your point, the first play of the game, touchdown, what was it, 78-yard touchdown called back due to an eligible man downfield from Laramie Tunsil, his 14th penalty of the year. But you know what I liked about that moment it didn't deter Bobby Slowik from sticking to his play call sheet, and
Exactly.
it did not force him to go back to be conservative, because at that point they were again playing from behind the sticks. And I also like that coming into this game, and I tweeted right before the game, we won't see this Texans' full potential unless every offensive weapon touches the ball. And I don't mean just, a target here, a target there. I thought that it should have been a purpose to be made that, hey, we still got to get John Metchie in the game. We got to make sure we get Tanky ball. We have a tight end. And so when I look at the target share, 7 targets for Nico, 7 targets for Tank, those
Yes.
guys combined for over 100 yards out of 8 catches on 14 targets. And then Joe Mixon 2 catches for 44 yards, but he had 4 targets. John Metchie going 3 for 3 for 33 yards. And of course, we talk about the eye test later in the game. I mean, stop trying some of these Bama receivers because they hit hard, right? Then you look at Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover. They combined for 9 targets, 7 caught for 58 yards. Robert Woods got in on the action as well. And Darray, when Darray caught his pass for 11 yards, and I thought that was a great screen call to negate the pressure by Bobby Slug. But I also thought by design they were able to get the ball out quicker and limit those hits that C.J. Stroud has been taking lately. By design, we weren't seeing a lot of those predictable screen calls. We saw them a little bit earlier in the play call on the play downs. And so I honestly thought that, number one, Bobby Slowik called his best game of the year. I thought that first drive was flawless. I thought for the most part of the game, he called a near flawless game. And I also think, hey, I got to be a little critical here because he made that interception. He threw the interception. Some of the more uncharacteristic plays that we were not used to seeing from CJ are starting to become a little bit more characteristic of him. That interception to Nico Collins, though I believe missing 5 games matters, I just felt like, hey, you know what? That was a throw that we're not accustomed to seeing him make, and that's a problem. But overall,
and I think that CJ may have thought that Nico was going to sit down. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying real quickly. I think on that play as well, I think that CJ thought Nico was going to sit down right there in that spot instead of continue going. And I think that's what it was. And John, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to throw this in as well. Those 4th down calls inside of the red zone with D'Amico starting to be being aggressive again. And like we said, one of them was a touch. One of them kept the drive going. Well, one of them was an interception. But the fact that he put the ball in CJ's hand, CJ said in the press conference he loved that. He loved the fact that
the Joe Mixon pass out the flats, right?
Yeah. He said that he loved the fact that D'Amico allowed him to be able to have the ball during those times, to have that confidence and that faith in him. And John, real quickly, it was funny because we were in the locker room and Bobby was walking through, and DJ Bieneme from ESPN said, "Hey, well, look like you should have a good week." And Bobby started laughing, and Bobby said, "I never have a good week. They're still going to have something to say about me."
I don't think they should. I don't think we should. I think that this is one of those games where if CJ throws just one touchdown, maybe people look at the game differently. A lot of fans lean the success all on CJ, but the fact is there were moments he let the offense down a little bit. He came through when he needed to, making some clutch throws. But overall, there is nothing bad we can say about Bobby. Bobby, for the first time, in my opinion, brought the fight to the opposing team's defense, put pressure on the opposing team's defense by his play calls. He attacked the edge of the defense, which is one of their weaknesses. And the offensive lineman, I thought, man, did a very good job as well. Had some miscues here and there, but for the most part, when you go from 9 sacks 2 weeks ago, 4 last week, to only allowing 1, again, understanding that Bobby helped that part of the offense out by saying, we're going to get the ball out quicker. We're going to do that. We're going to establish that tempo and rhythm by making sure everybody can eat on this offense. I mean, again, I just told you, got the tight end group combined for 9 targets. That's a good thing. John Metchie still being involved. That's a good thing because for so long we saw him not involved in the game plan. And he had a clutch catch for 15 yards on that first drive. So to see all of those things take place, no flack from me for Bobby. I thought he called a near flawless game, and no longer should he wear that hat on the sideline.
And I'm gonna tell you this too, John. CJ took what the defense gave him, and I love the fact that he did that, even to the point where he used his legs on some of the plays. And so you can see that. And hey, John, look, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Hey, I got my favorite pair of pants I like to wear, my favorite shirt that I got my favorite outfit that I wear, John, and I think that I look good in, and it gives me that confidence when I'm out. I'll be like, hey, look, you know what I'm saying? I could tell I could put in a little work in the gym. Hey, maybe that's what it was for CJ on Monday night. Maybe it was just having Nico's presence probably gave him that type of confidence, and he had on his best garden trail. Some of y'all ain't gonna know what that means.
I don't even know what that means. Is that my Jabos?
No, that's the Bill Cosby, the Cosby Show episode where Theo wanted that shirt made, and don't worry about it. Y'all too young.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm a 90s baby. But we got to talk about this stifling defense, right? 5 sacks. And you talk about near flawless. Let's talk about the flawless game from Derek Stingley and Jaylen Pitre. Was it a flag? Was it unnecessary roughness? I don't think so. But overall, the Texans defense continued to bring the fight to this Dallas offense that was without some key players, but they was a huge part of why the Texans got it done. So more Texans talk when we come back. Sarge, quick question. How many Texans fans do you think are driving back right now to Houston with a hangover at the party last night?
Well, I'm hoping that they have a designated driver, and I'm hoping that they are just in the passenger seat or in the back seat sleep. So I'm hoping that the designated driver had nothing to drink, but the rest of them definitely had hangovers. And
I hope that they took advantage of what we've been talking about here on the show from our friends at Zbiotics. Every time I have a pre-alcohol drink, I notice the difference the next day. And I know Texan fans probably need those Zbiotics right now because Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces enzymes to break down this byproduct. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and feel your best the next day. Once again, guys, this prebiotic drink, I have a few myself. Don't necessarily drink a lot, but when I do, I make sure I take that so I can feel like my best and feel like myself the next day. I'm too old to be sitting around with a hangover, and so are you guys. So go to Zbiotics.com/lockedon to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On NFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund you your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to Zbiotics.com/lockedon and use code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off at checkout. And also, Texan fans, we was telling y'all all week about some of these over-unders and odds. Like we talked about, Sarge, if you remember, we talked about the over-under for this game set at 42.5 points. That was plus 260. If you took that, you made some money. We also talked about, hey, listen, C.J. Stroud and his ability to get his legs involved. If you took his over-under on his rushing yards, well, you also got a little money too. Was you looking for Houston to score the first touchdown? That was at plus 160. That was a great value for a team that really wanted to start strong, and Houston scored the first touchdown. So here on the Locked On Texans podcast, we're going to make sure we give you the odds that FanDuel offers because they're giving out extra money. Place $5, you win your first $5 bet, they're going to give you $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. All you need to do is win your first $5 bet. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Again, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. If you're listening to the audio podcast, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. If you see us right now on YouTube, you got to understand this, man. Just watching that Texans defense for me, Sarge, and I like some good old school hard hitting football at times, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jaylen Pitre. Shout out to Jaylen Pitre and NFL making the game so soft. I mean, we saw him lead with his shoulder, hit the shoulder. Stop getting scared of the impact that some of these players are gonna make in contact when they hit each other. It's the game of football. But shout out to the Baylor Bear, the Big 12, in his third year. Jaylen Pitre, again, one of the Texans' best players for just having a stout game. But 5 sacks for the Houston Texans, 2 by Danielle Hunter, no Will Anderson. He stepped up. Tim Settle Jr., boy, he's been giving offensive linemen on the inside work all year. And overall, you look at a Texans team defensively. You know, if there's one thing we could have said, Sarge, the last couple of weeks, we know the Texans offense ain't scoring in the second half, but the defense allowed 3 TDs to the Jets in the second half. And look what they were able to do on some of those third down conversions when they went up against the Detroit Lions. They got to be better at this. They got to be better at matchups. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Dallas Cowboys, though they are struggling, did not score a single point in the second half. And overall, they held that offense to 5 of 15 on third down, Sarge.
John, I'm going to tell you like this. I think that the reason why Jaylen Pitre, former Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, felt so comfortable playing inside of that stadium was that's where they play the Big 12 championship. And so he just felt like he was at home. He felt like he was at home. Being on that field, John, he just like, I am on familiar ground. And, John, the one thing that I love about Jaylen Pitre, and the one thing that he told me exclusively at training camp, with this position move, with him playing the slot corner position, with him, and they even put him at safety a little bit last night when they were running 3 safeties at one point. John, he just said, this is being closer to the line. I get to hit more. And that's the one thing that he has, man. He has that controlled aggression. And so you give him that opportunity to make those type of hits, to make those type of plays, and he loves it. He says, Sarge, I'm not running from no smoke. I don't run from no smoke. And I know exactly what he meant by that. He has to hit. John, listen, I know that some people are going to say, oh, Sarge, you tripping. But when he plays the way that he played against the Dallas Cowboys, and that he has actually been playing throughout the year, even giving up some big plays, even, not playing as well in coverage. I mean, he just reminds me of Troy Polamalu from the former Pittsburgh Steelers safety. What they would do is they would bring him down, walk him down to the line, let him get some of that contact, let him get some of that action, because being up top, he wasn't getting that action. And so that's exactly what they did. Okay, Jaylen, we're got to play to your strong suit. And John, listen, like I said, may not have been the best in coverage, but 2 things you're going to get from Jaylen Pitre when he's on that field, outside of, I'm talking about beside the hustle that he plays with. John, he's going to make sure that he makes the tackles. And the one thing that he is not getting enough credit for is his ability to cause turnovers. His ability to cause turnovers, whether it's him getting an interception, whether it's him tipping the ball. Remember on the first the first play of the first offensive drive for the Green Bay Packers, he tipped the ball up and Neville Hewitt was able to get the interception. He had that interception before the half against the Indianapolis Colts. And, on Monday night, I mean, you got Derek Bennett making the strip sack.
Derek Barnett.
I'm sorry, I said Derek Bennett. Derek Barnett, excuse me, making the strip sack fumble.
The big boys touchdown.
The offensive tackle, Tyler Guyton, picked it up and started to run. And what did Jaylen Pitre do? Put his shoulder directly on the ball and knock the ball right back out for. And look, I'm not going to take away your thunder, John. So I'm going to let you tell the viewers, fans, and listeners what happened after Jaylen Pitre.
Yeah, we got a thick
Tyler
six.
And knock that ball out.
We got a thick six. We got a thick six. No, but so what I enjoyed about last night defense, right? And I really do think the offense set the tone for the entire game on that first play and on that first drive. We got a shot to Nico Collins on the sideline, and he was screaming, I think, to the entire sideline, I want more. I want more.
Yeah.
And so that defense got the support of their offense. They didn't have to be out on their field a whole bunch, right? At times you saw Dallas maybe, keep it a little bit close in terms of now they're in 33, they're in field position. We know about them going forward on fourth down in their red zone at that point that they needed to. The Texans get a stop, but they were just everywhere, I thought, Texans defensively. Henry To'oTo'o had an amazing game. Aziz had an amazing game. I think that, Houston definitely needs Kamari Lassiter back. I don't want to see Jeff Okudah lined up on a slot receiver again because, that was the Dallas Cowboys lone TD. That was brutal to watch. But, to be fair, that was his first game back. But even Kadar Holman made a play, right? But I look at that game and I say, man, with no Will Anderson, for weeks we talked about, hey, man, where's the Neil Hunter and the sacks? The pressures are getting there, but where are the sacks? We had Will Anderson on the show, kind of talked about that. He said, man, listen, no sacks going to come. He got going, won AFC Defensive Player of the Month. Now he's out, but then you see the Neil Hunter just kick it up a notch. And he was whooping up on the Dallas Cowboys. But for me, Sarge, the story of –
and the Nico Autry, too.
And the Nico Autry, welcome back. He's creating pressure again. Tim Settle. Those guys are really doing a great job collectively getting those sacks. But for Derek Stingley that shut down CeeDee Lamb whenever he was on and matched up with him, for Derek Stingley that at one point in the game, Cooper Rush had a passer rating of 3.5 when targeting Derek Stingley. When you look at all of that, you say to yourself, this is the all-pro cornerback that we were expecting to see. And he's been quietly putting together a phenomenal season. Prime time, of course, you're going up against an offense without Dak Prescott. However, CeeDee Lamb is still CeeDee Lamb. We've seen him make it work. And 17 routes, 2 catches, 19 yards, 3 pass breakups, and an interception. I think that's the story for that defense. Just an awesome overall game from Derek Stingley.
And you know what, John? It was good to see Azeez Al-Shaair back on the field, for another week. John, he really makes that defense go. He really puts everybody in position. And even when that play with Jeff Okudah, there was a lot going on that play. Jeff Okudah did get beat off the line. It's very hard for a person who just playing his first game of the year to go up against a player with that amount of speed in Turpin. But what the thing that was supposed to happen was Kalen Bullock was supposed to be over a little bit more. So as soon as that play was over, as soon as the defense got to the bench, Azeez Al-Shaair went right to Kalen Bullock and started to coach him and tell him. And I couldn't hear the words that he was saying, but if I'm reading the hand gestures, he was telling him, you took the wrong angle. You should have been over just a tad bit more, and you could have cut that off. And that's something that Kalen Bullock has to learn. There's been a number of times this season he's been out of position at that safety position and has allowed some big plays to happen, but that's going to happen when you have a rookie on the field like that. And one more thing about Danielle Hunter, John, against the Indianapolis Colts, the game that he had when he had that game, when they finally turned it on against the Colts, what he said was, I just told myself, you know what, F it. I'm just going to go get him. I'm just going to go get him. And on Monday night against the Dallas Cowboys, he said he even went to his coaches and he was just like, hey, F it. I'm just going to go get him. All right. I'm just going to go get him. And that's exactly what he did. He caused havoc, John, and it was amazing.
Eye test success. What are some things that Sarge and I saw that really made a key difference to this game? We're going to talk about that on this Victory Tuesday, before we close out today's show. Listen up, renters. Have you ever felt like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. We've all been there feeling like you're burning cash with all of your rent checks. It's frustrating. But here's the deal. Built Rewards has figured out a way to make renting more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution with Built. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month you pay your rent and watch the Built points come in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation, put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 and more airlines and over 700,000 hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards future rent payments. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. You got a lifestyle to uphold here. Use Built to help you uphold it. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/locked on NFL. That is joinbuilt, JOINBILT.com/locked on NFL. Make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/locked on NFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Sarge, what were some things that you saw that took place last night that made you say, wow, that aided to the Houston Texans being able to get a 34-10 victory?
John, as much as I want to take away from your moment, I will not, because I want to talk about that fake punt, but I'm not going to talk about that.
No, talk about it.
No,
talk about it.
No.
Give my boy John his love.
I'm going to tell you what I saw. I saw an offensive line that, even though at times they didn't have it all together, they contained Micah Parsons. And that's the way you have to beat that Dallas Cowboys defense is. You have to start with him. You have to start with Micah Parsons. And once you start with Micah Parsons, everything else can be handled. But you got to make sure that he's contained. And they did not let him be as disruptive as he could have been. I think they only allowed 8 pressures. But that's something you got to give up to the – yeah. That's something, and I think he had 3 penalties from trying to jump off, from jumping off sides. That's one thing that you have to give that Houston Texans offensive line is that Joe Mixon had 109 yards rushing. They finally got the rushing, the run blocking kind of figured out. They're going into the next week, against the Tennessee Titans. They should be a whole lot better with that. But I definitely like what I seen from that offensive line on Monday night against the Dallas Cowboys. And another thing that I liked was it was just good to see the return of Joe Mixon. He looked like he was having fun on Monday night, anytime you get John, listen, I predicted 130 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown. But I think that what did he end up with? 130 all-purpose yards?
I think 150
all-purpose yards. All-purpose yards, 3 touchdowns. They all came rushing. He didn't get the receiving, but he did get the 3 touchdowns. I just had a feeling that Joe Mixon was going to eat against that Dallas Cowboys defense.
Before I talk about my boy, I thought that, last week we talked about just doing the right things right. And we know how weak this Dallas defense is. Near last in every category in the NFL, but my takeaway from last week was, hey, I'm looking at this Dallas defense and I see Lamar Jackson and I see, how a lot of these offenses have beat the Dallas defense with play actions and things of that nature. But overall, just attacking the edge of that defense. And to your point with Michael Parsons, just playing undisciplined. That's a very undisciplined defense up in Dallas. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing all year. And whether it's undisciplined by penalties or whether it's being undisciplined and not being where you're supposed to be on the field, teams have been able to take advantage of that. And for 4 quarters, that's for what we saw from the Houston Texans be able to do. And so just sticking to the game plan working, Bobby Slowik and his script working, right? I thought his first 15 plays for the most part was again near flawless, and having the confidence in themselves to get these things done. And to your point, Sarge, absolutely. I saw them so happy on the sideline, and Joe Mixon rounding up the boys every time he scored, and they celebrating in the end zone together. So that was good to see. But John Metchie, listen, by the way, the fake punt, I thought that early in the game was very ballsy, but that's a team that, what do they got to lose? It was all game, but the recognition to read it, to come down and make the play, to tackle with the intensity that he did. And it was a good form tackle. Like he looked like a better tackler than Amar Sauce Gardner right now. Nobody was able to break the tackle on him. It was solid. He got shoulder with the square. He broke down. So, John Metchie is a guy that I think all year, we're dating back to his first year in the league due to him not being able to play. He's had to fight a lot. And so year one, it was just fighting to get back healthy and getting over that life and that his life roadblock at the time, excuse me. Year two was just fighting to get back into football shape. Right now, year three is just fighting to be a part of this team and have an impact when he can. And so whether that's coming by blocking, whether that's coming by stepping up in games where we saw him step up last week, or whether that's coming down and stepping up with making a big tackle to give the Houston Texans great field position and the ball back, he's finding a way to just figure it out and get it done. And so I thought that tackle, along with going 3 for 3, catching all of his targets, being a part of the offensive game plan, I thought that for him is just another victory under his belt. You can't hold him down. You can't hold him back. He's going to find a way to get it done. And also, the offense looks a whole lot different with Nico Collins on the field, right?
Yes, exactly. It looks very different. And John, I have to say this before we end this show. I have to say this. I hope, and pray that, and I don't mean like really, really pray, but I just hope and pray that Dallas Cowboys linebacker DeMarvion Overshown learns that you cannot, if you can't back it up, you know what I'm saying? My peoples used to say when I was growing up, because I'm a 70s baby. Hey man, don't write
a check.
Don't let your mouth write a check that your butt can't cash. You woke up that sleeping giant, and John, I'm gonna be honest with you. He woke up a sleeping giant. And I think that these next 2 games from the Houston Texans, you're going to see a lot more offensive wise. And in that second half, John, like I said, I think that they're starting to see, because they were still moving the ball in the second half, and they got that touchdown late. But all you got to do is see the ball go through the net one time. That's what shooters say. If I'm having an off night, I just need to see it go through the hoop one time.
Perfect point, Sarge. This was the game that we talked about all last week that was going to get this team going. And I think they're going to be getting going on the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they put some things together. And they also are going up against teams that, right now have their own dysfunction going on. So make sure you guys continue to listen to the Locked On Texans podcast with me and Sarge. I'm John, some sports guy Hickman. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Also give the Locked On Texans podcast a subscription and follow on YouTube at Locked On Texans and on Twitter at Locked On Texans.
You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at the Big Source Sports with a Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, y'all have a good Victory Tuesday. Peace.